Thank you for joining us for another For Investors by Investors Long Beach Cerritos podcast. As always, we're proud to be your all-education real estate resource without any kind of sales pitch. If you'd like to attend one of our meetings in person, we meet on the last Thursday of each month at the Cerritos Library in Cerritos, California. You can RSVP at meetup.com/for investors by investors. To find more investment resources such as blogs and podcasts and content from other FIBI groups, go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com and search our entire library. Now on to the podcast.
For those of you guys who don't know, my name is Matthew Owens. I'm a California licensed CPA and I'm a full-time real estate investor. I flipped over 700 houses. I flip about 5 a month right now. We also do a lot of value-add multifamilies in different markets around the country. We do short-term rentals. We lend capital to multiple flippers in different markets around the country as well. And then we run this nonprofit organization as well that just teaches financial education. Raymond here is, I know you just sat down, so I wanted to pull you back up. So Raymond here is my partner here with FIBI Cerritos Long Beach. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Raymond.
Okay, so Matthew brought me here to kind of balance the demographic. I'm Asian, Chinese. I'm a local real estate broker. I do from about 605 all the way to 15 and to Irvine. And we sell homes. We started from about 5 houses a year, now over 70 houses a year. And we're specializing in residential real estate properties. So if you guys have any questions, always feel free to call me or contact us for questions. And our mission statement is really to help people achieve financial freedom through real estate. And then I think that's the goal of FIBI as well. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you.
I wanted Raymond to be a partner because he has a lot of international connections. I'm like, dude, you gotta come over here. And he's doing like 70 deals a year like that and helping like 70 people a year or more. That's a lot of volume for any realtor and anybody. That's a lot. You know, doing that many deals a month is, if you think about the level of activity and workload there, it's impressive. It's not easy to do. So, who here has done, multiple flips in the past? Okay, how about one flip? Okay? Don't be shy, don't worry, it's okay. Everybody's like, I'm not sure if I did a flip or not. So, and who here invests in long-term real estate and like rentals? Okay, great. So, flipping properties can be really, really valuable. And let me get my topic list out that I forgot here. So, flipping properties can be really valuable, but it can also be a full-time job. So, you want to make sure that you know to start off what your goals are involved. I started flipping to build enough equity to invest in cash flow real estate to then not have to work. Flipping can be a lot of work. And whether you're wholesaling, whether you're fixing, flipping, and rehabbing, whether you're wholetailing, which is just buying a property, cleaning it barely, and then getting it up on the market, or doing a few minor things to it and getting it up on the market. There's a lot of ways to make spreads on these, and there's lots of opportunity. So, but in order to do that, you have to have viable team members. And, we here at FIBI, we're a nonprofit. We don't make a lot of money doing this stuff. Here at the club, we basically break even. And so we have different sponsors. And I surrounded myself with the team members that I do business with that help with this stuff because I know they're viable team members that provide a lot of value. So first, what I'd like to do is just mention our sponsors and let you guys know what they do. First, I'm going to bring up Jeff. Jeff, could you talk a little bit about what UDirect does and how you help people?
I probably could. So hi, I'm Jeff Dixon. Our company is UDirect IRA Services, and we are a self-directed IRA company. And what that means is we can show you how you can take your old 401ks and IRAs, move it into a self-directed account, and then start buying things like real estate or making loans, assets outside of the stock market. The IRS allows you to hold a number of different types of assets in an IRA. Most companies limit you to stocks and bonds, but the IRS does not. So if you're interested in things outside of the stock market, we can help you with that. Our information is on the back table, and we'd be happy to assist anybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next person that I'd like to is anybody from Concept 360 here? Property management company. So Concept 360 is a property management company that works basically in the Long Beach area that I think is really valuable. We have Trillion Capital. Anybody here from Trillion? Trillion is a private money lender here in Southern California that does a ton of volume in this area. We'll do all kinds of creative deals, and a good hard money lender is going to tell you when not to do a deal, so they will help you in that regard. Hart King, Bill, tell us a little bit about what Hart King does.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Bill Hart, Hart King. We're an Orange County-based real estate and corporate transactional firm, 17 lawyers, been in business about 40 years. And we've done a lot of work for Matt and his organization, both from a corporate LLC organizational standpoint. And so just very happy to be here. Any questions you have about formation of entities to purchase or sell property, document the purchase and sale of property, finance property, all of that documentation that looks and sounds pretty mysterious, I know, the first time you look at it, and daunting, we can help you with, and have a fair amount of experience doing that throughout not only California, but the United States. Thank you.
It's rare to find an attorney that actually does what they say they're going to do and really adds a lot of value and teaches you along the way, which is what you're paying for when you're paying for an attorney or a CPA. You're paying for the knowledge and the understanding that they have. The legal documents a lot of people can do, a lot of attorneys can do, but a lot of them don't know how to teach you the right way. So attorneys and CPAs, you find the people that will teach you the right way to do this. That being said, last sponsor, Jasmine. Come on up, Note Assistance Program.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, Jazz.
How's everyone doing in here? That was not appropriate. Okay, one more time. How's everyone doing in here? Good. All right, just in case you haven't noticed, I'm the brightest person in this room, and I don't leave my brains. Okay? I need energy. And so what do? I teach non-performing notes. How many in this room have purchased mortgage notes before? Ooh, that's awesome. So, Matt here has attended our Note Lab. We do a 2-day class to teach you how to increase your inventory if you're a flipper. I know tonight's meeting is about flipping, am I correct?
Yes.
So, we have a podcast. Write this down. Naked Notes. I said naked. Did you hear me? Naked Notes. Okay? Don't get too excited, but listen to that podcast because we actually have something on there how flippers get. You don't want to be excited? All right, listen to the podcast because we actually have an episode where we talk to flippers about how notes, non-performing rate mortgages, can help increase your inventory. Okay? So I know one of your personal struggles out here, if you're an actual flipper doing this, is inventory. Okay? And so this is a way to backdoor inventory buying notes from banks, and we have them. So last thing I'll say is we have a 2-day class in San Francisco this April, and then we are coming back to Los Angeles in July. These two gentlemen are going to be there. He's a repeat offender. He's been to a couple of them. It's going to be his first time. We also just signed up David Church. So if you guys are at his meeting, it's another RIA Club owner. So the who's who are joining this program, and I invite you to come check it out. I will be in the back to say hello to you guys all night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Giddy up. Yeah, I'm in the magazine. Page 34.
Page 34. We'll have them tabbed for next month for sure. So in next month we're going to be doing a presentation on property management. So we're going to have Concept 360 come in and do a presentation on proper property management and things like that. So we try to add as much value as we can to these groups and really just teach as much as possible. What we get out of it is a bunch of relationships and a bunch of people with resources, whether it's capital, time, properties, or contacts. So that's what I get out of it. And when I started doing this, my business exploded. And a lot of this flipping piece comes down to those contacts. So it's really, really important to constantly be going through and finding the right relationships in the proper team categories. And we'll go over a lot of those teams. But one of the first things that I want to start sharing with you guys is the numbers, okay? Is the understanding of the numbers behind the flip. Because if you don't understand the numbers behind a flip, it doesn't matter if you get a good deal or if you're finding new ways of marketing things. If you don't know how to analyze them really, really fast, and make offers really, really fast, you're not going to get the deals, especially in this market. Usually when there's a down market, you're going to get a lot more deals, and they're going to be juicier deals because everybody's running away. I was buying out in Tennessee. I invest a lot in the Midwest. I started out in Memphis, Tennessee. I own a management company there and a brokerage there, and we started investing in different markets as well, in Little Rock, in St. Louis, in Georgia, in Indiana. We started lending in Tampa and North Carolina and different markets around the country, and you start to see the margins a lot of the people are getting by going direct to the source and going directly to homeowners to find deals. And you start to see all that stuff, and you realize very quickly that, a lot of this comes down to your system and your processes to get that deal cheaper, and also your sales skill sets. So you have to understand the numbers. You have to understand how to market for deals. You have to understand the process that you go through, that sales process, where you're analyzing the lead and going to the property and reviewing the actual construction piece. You have to know how to comp out properties on the rental side for rents as well as market value, and you have to know how to deal with the rehab. Okay, and then you got to learn how to sell the house too, which is all these different pieces go along with it, and each one takes a lot of refinement to get really good at them, okay? After doing 700 of these things, you learn everything not to do. You learn every mistake in the book that you can possibly make and every way you can lose money on a deal. Nowadays, I was just telling somebody on a podcast this morning that you lose $5,000 on something, and it's like nowadays, it's like whatever, okay, the next deal, go to the next one, go to the next one. And, you're like, let's not do that again. Let's make sure we find a way not to do that again. And so, I'm going to scare the crap out of you guys right now, okay, with a gigantic Excel document, okay? So, let's see. So this is my analysis sheet, and no, you can't have it, it's mine, but you guys can actually take notes and utilize the strategies that I'm going to show you when you do this, okay? So, and the reason I can't give it to you is it's very proprietary. It's developed over a very long period of time, and a lot of sweat equity goes into this thing. So, but utilize it as a way to analyze deals very quickly. The very first thing, anybody can tell me, can anybody tell me what things you need to know first when you first get a deal in? When a deal comes to you and you're going to analyze it, what are you looking for first? What are the key things that you need to know about that property? ARV, okay.
Purchase price.
Purchase price, okay. Anything else?
Rent.
Rent amounts, okay. Is it rented or not?
What are the comps?
What are the comps? Part of the ARV piece. Yeah, time on the market, understanding how long things are selling in that specific area. What about the rehab numbers? The closing costs, your interest costs. There's a lot of different costs involved. And so one of the first things you're going to do when you first bring up a property is you're going to start going through, and in this sheet I have it tooled to where, orange means, which I don't know if you can see that's orange or not, but orange means drop down, the gray is formula, and green is a fill-in. So, I have property address here, I have mailers, so my cost structure changes depending on what type of mailer, what type of activity you're doing to find that property. So is it a wholesaler deal? Is it from a mailer? Is it from a pay-by-click marketing? Is it from an auction site? And there's different cost structures that cost you money in those things. If you're doing mailers, you need to know what your cost per closed deal is so that you can build that into your cost function to make sure that you're not losing money. And you could be making money on a flip and still losing money if it costs you $20,000 to find a deal, which could happen in California when you're dealing with mailers. So when you're dealing with this stuff, you want to understand your true cost structure involved, okay? Including all of your overhead associated with it. So I'll leave it on here. Bedroom, bath, you need to know the year built. Why is that important? You go buy something in 1920, either the plumbing has been replaced or it hasn't, right? That's a big ticket item. So is the electrical, the roof. We bought a 12-unit building that was built in 1910. We had to do the roof, plumbing, electrical, foundation, HVAC systems, and we went to go reframe and do the windows. The entire windows needed to be reframed. It was absolutely madness. We're doing, I'll show you guys in a little bit, we're doing a 15-unit that we're turning into an 18-unit building, and we had to reframe the entire building from the wood rot inside of it. And we were ready for it and expecting a big chunk of that. We weren't expecting as much as we got, but it was a big, it took a long time to reframe this entire building. It probably would have been easier to demolish. But the age of the building is extremely important because it tells you a lot about how much risk you're going to take in the rehab. rehab. If you're going through and dealing with one of these older houses or anything built before 1970, you better be looking at that plumbing and electrical and in a lot more detail and buffering those things. Plus, a lot of these older properties, their angles are not right. You have lead-based paint issues and things like that with the property. You have to watch out for some of the big construction costs that can cost you a lot of money. There's usually wood rot underneath the floors, or there's problems with the siding or something like that costs you a lot that's been sitting there for a long time. So a lot of these things go unaddressed, and you've got to bump your numbers up when you're dealing with an old property. So square footage is important to understand the top floor and the second floor and the bottom floor square footage, because you have different roof costs that go into that if you're dealing with something that has, more roof space and no extra unit over the garage, or no extra, roofing over the garage if it's a straight up build. You also have additional costs when there's multiple pitches involved and there's a 2-story and it's a steeper roof. You have additional costs there that it costs you money. So you want to be careful and understand those things when it comes to the renovation. A lot of the risk can be mitigated by knowing your comps and knowing what your rehab is. Those two main factors. Everything else is just pure math. Okay? So look and understanding you're comparing apples to apples as well. So looking at this, you have wood siding. What kind of siding is it? You want to understand everything about the property. And so when you're going through and doing an analysis, I'm going to show you one that's filled out already so you guys can understand what this looks like. But basically, if you're analyzing this property, for example, and I have this highlighted in different ways for a reason, this is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath property that's 1728 square feet. I put the value at 123.5 on this thing to be conservative, and these green ones are my closest comps that I felt were good value here as far as my comparable sales. Now, what this does is, what is an appraiser going to do? An appraiser is going to come in and they're going to say, I want to look at comps within the last 6 months and within a half a mile, preferably, of your property. If it's more rural or there's not enough comps available, they'll go back 12 months or they'll go out a mile away from the property if they can't find something closer that is apples to apples comparison to your numbers. And so it's really, really important to know what your comps are and be able to prove what you say your value is. Because if you can't prove your value there, your appraiser may not see the same things you do. A lot of times you're pulling a bunch of comps that you see available that are fully renovated, but they may not be on the MLS. They may have not sold on the MLS, but you see the pictures, you see the market value sale. But you may not be, the appraiser may only use MLS comps. So you have to be very proactive on your sale, on your back end, compile a report like this, show them the distance, the date. I didn't fill in the distance here, but fill in the date, fill in all that stuff, show the report to the appraiser, and have whoever's meeting for the appraiser there, if you're meeting them, bring it with you. Show them, hey, just in case you need to see, just in case I pulled some comps, this is what I see. Is there anything different than what you see? And you really gotta stroke that ego of the appraiser, because a lot of times they have their pet peeves where sometimes in the Midwest they don't like dealing with investors. They just are mad that you're making money on a deal, and they're upset that you're selling a property, and they're going, well, these investors come in here and try to take up all of our properties, and we're also rehabbing a bunch of blighted houses all over the country too. So we go fix up a piece of junk in the hood and let somebody live there, and really be able to go through and improve that neighborhood. There's a lot of value of what people do there. Now, but the appraisers, you can't get through that emotion unless you're super cool with them and just like really saying, hey, let me know what you think. I'm going to adhere to your advice, but this is what I'm saying. Tell me where I'm doing wrong if I'm wrong on this. They'll tell you a ton. We've had people say, I didn't like that sale because I don't like that flipper, so I won't go sell it I won't go use their comps because I don't like them. It's very interesting. But, you want to be very careful on that back end, okay? So, question, yeah.
How do you get the non-MLS data?
So there's a bunch of sites you can go to. One with Redfin, Zillow, there's other comp sources that you can go to. Now, this estimate is totally wrong. Like the averages, the rental meter, things like that, they're all wrong. You can't use those numbers. You have to go through you can't use those numbers. You have to go and pick specific comps that are close to your square footage that are actually fixed up, that is going to be comparable to your sale when you fully fix up that property. And then you got to go check and make sure the Zillow numbers are right on square footage and bed and bath and things like that for each one of those comps, as well as your property as well, because a lot of times that data is completely skewed and wrong. Zillow takes into consideration numbers that are outside of a mile, that are foreclosures or non-fixed up properties and things like that. And you realize their estimates are totally wrong too. You do the same thing with the rental aspects of this too, where you're going through and picking out specific properties and specific comps here, and then you're going through on the rent side and saying, is this a fixed up property like mine's going to be, or am I going to just do nothing to it and I got to come up with lower comps because I'm going to do some, light renovation work, or just a rent ready and get it up and running so that it's rented. So you want to compare those apples to apples when you're doing your comp analysis, and the numbers are not always right, okay? You're in a general range. So, when I come in here, and this formula, what happens is, in the Midwest, now the numbers are different in California, but in the Midwest, what happens is an appraiser will say, hey, this comp was 1,506 square feet, and this one was 1,728 square feet. And this one sold for 120, and you can see here in the formula, up here at the top, it's very small, I'm sorry. It says it multiplies the difference between these two square footages by $25 a square foot and adds it to this 120. So it'll take the difference here times $25 and add it to 120, coming up with 125. Now that's because appraisers in the Midwest will go through, they're not going to go and give you a $79 a square foot adjustment there, because if you have like a 2,500 square foot house and everything else in the area is, in this range as far as square footages go, they're not just going to give you some crazy high number way above what the averages in these areas are. They're going to keep you within a range of these normal areas and give you smaller price adjustments here. And they'll give you price adjustments for square footage, they'll give you price adjustments for bed and baths. And whenever you're dealing with these appraisers, you want to make sure you're reviewing those appraisal reports to see if your appraisal comes back wrong. See if they did anything wrong. I've found that 25 to 30% of the time, when you get an appraisal back wrong, they messed up on square footage, they didn't pick comps. I've gone through and disputed because they picked comps a mile away from the property that was unrenovated, because they bring in an appraisal management company, brings in an appraiser from a different area that doesn't know the area sometimes, and then you have big problems with that. And so you want to make sure that you're able to go through and understand what that appraisal is, what that is, and what comps they used. And I've been able to show them, look, I found 5 comps within a half a mile of the property that are much closer than yours, that are fixed up. They're just not on the MLS. And so, because a lot of private sellers sell these too. And so sometimes appraisal management companies will tell the appraiser that you have to use MLS comps and stuff like that. And so you want to beat down the doors until you find somebody that's okay to pull those other comps, or will make those adjustments. And when you make those adjustments, when you have them make those adjustments, you're requesting a dispute of an appraisal. You have to go through and make sure that you're very, very nice about it. Here's some new information that you may not have seen. Also, here's all the work I did on the rehab and every detail of that, so that they see all the extra work and the systems you've done in detail. And you want to really do that up front. Like if you have to dispute an appraisal, it's always got to be new information that they may not have seen on the market, that wasn't on MLS, or something they didn't know about. So you're making sure that they save face from their appraisal management company, because if they come back and do some major adjustment because they made a mistake, then you're going to have problems with them making that adjustment if it's a major change, unless there's something new that you can share with them to kind of stroke that ego a little bit. You got a question in the back, and I'll come to you.
Yes, so I'm wondering, how are you comping areas that are gentrifying, where you have like one street of nice houses and then the next street over it's like pretty sketch? And then also, how are you comping like homes where you're planning on adding an ADU? There's not a lot of homes in the area that have ADUs.
So first question was the comps in a gentrifying area.
Yes.
You have to know your neighborhoods. You have to go, if you're doing business in a new market, you want to understand what the main streets are. Go talk to realtors, go talk to property managers, go talk to inspectors, go talk to closing agents, go bring a map to them, or show them on screen and have a meeting with them about where these neighborhoods are and understand those things. It's actually not too hard to call up an appraiser, and we get an appraisal done anyways, So to just check our numbers and make sure we're not going crazy, they don't know the real numbers. But we'll show our comps to the appraiser when we're getting them to say, does this look reasonable? Where are we at here? Is this right where I should be for a fully renovated property? And they'll tell you, no, I think you're a little bit higher, or you're a little bit low, or hey, in Missouri, they're counting the basement and they shouldn't in their square footage or something like that, you know? So there's intricacies there. If you're dealing with weird units like an ADU or a duplex or triplex or fourplex, they're very hard to comp. Because if you're trying to comp out a fourplex, for example, you're going to have a problem when there's no other fourplexes or triplexes in the area. Because they're not going to comp it compared to a commercial 5-unit building, because 5-unit above is typically commercial for financing purposes. And so, but they're gonna go through and try to comp it from duplexes and triplexes, which might go for a lower price point per door. And a lot of times, maybe there's nothing that's been sold that's been fixed up like yours. And so you have comp issues. A lot of times, that's when a seller finance strategy comes in, you know, for those types of units as well as smaller multifamilies, because it's difficult to get financing on multifamilies under $1 million. So because you're going to a local lender or somebody like that can do those deals in the Midwest. So usually there's always going to be financeable and non-financeable properties. That doesn't mean that you couldn't go to an appraiser and find that out, or specifically try to find the duplexes, or go pull an MLS report, you know, and go to 12 months and have those people do that. It's not that difficult to find the right team member to keep on your team there. And if it's, hey, I'll give you $20 every time you pull a report for me, then fine, you know? So, well, one sec, I got right here, and then I'll come back to you in Adrian.
Yeah, man, I I believe out of Memphis is expert level difficulty when it comes to running comps. Because of the velocity of wholesale transactions and because of all the pockets, I have a quad that's in great interior condition in the 38107 zip code. I've been unable to turn it because of that. There's no good sales data. There's no recent sales. There's a boarded up quad across the street from it. It's near an opportunity zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, should I try to bring on a full-time appraiser, kind of as a member of the team? Is it really? Do you think
it's valuable, but you want to make sure that an appraiser knows what they're doing, because there's a lot of them that don't, and so you want to make sure they really know their numbers. And you know, I don't think you need to bring them on full-time or anything. I think there's, like I said, there's financeable and non-financeable properties. Like the one you're dealing with is. You're not going to get financing on it, in a lower end area on a fourplex like that. It's going to be very difficult to find a bank that'll do that. You know, they might do it at 50% loan to value because that's where it comps out or something. But these lower end ones are tough, and so a lot of people that I know on the lower end ones or properties that don't comp out, they'll do seller financing and sell it to a homeowner. You know, in Tennessee, the usury rate is 9.5%, for example. And so if you can go through and finance a homeowner and utilizing an NMLS certified broker to do that transaction, and that they can qualify them, make sure they're qualified under Dodd-Frank and that type of stuff. But typically you can finance that and have it a 10% down payment or something like that, or a 15% down, and have someone else buy that property from you, and you can finance it. And if you do the arbitrage on your profit at the 9.5% rate, you're making 12+% on those numbers. And so what's really cool is that you can do that, and then you can sell the paper off. It's another way to sell that property, selling the paper off. Okay, so if someone put that money down, you can also sell what your cost is and just make the spread involved too. So there's really cool strategies to do that on non-financeable properties. Learning the financing piece, learning those types of seller finance strategies, get you out of problem properties. Okay, and they help you along the way to be able to really, create unique cash flow streams that can be crazy profitable. So if you understand the math behind it, make sense? Question about it.
Yeah, concerning multifamilies when you run comps, do you expand your parameters when you run comps a little bit further back, a little bit further out than you do single family?
Yeah, a lot of appraisers will go out, like I've seen them go out as far as 5 miles and things like that in the past to find the right comps if there's very few and far between multifamilies or properties that are fourplexes or fiveplexes or 5 units or more. So they're going to, on the multifamily, they're going to comp out properties based off of the income that they're generating based on the cost per unit and things like that as well, and the cap rates that are going for in the area. So, but it's very much more difficult to comp out multifamily because you're dealing with not knowing necessarily what that thing produces in income. Appraisers, when they're doing that, they go into a lot of detail in the analysis of all those other individual comps and will call the other selling agents and things like that to find out what the financials were and the cash flow was of those other comps when they're doing it. So they charge you an arm and a leg for the commercial appraisal, of course. So make sense? Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at these closest comps, and then I'm saying, hey, you know what? This produces, the average of this is 125. The average of the cost per square foot is 127. But you know what? I'm seeing the three closest comps to me is a little bit smaller square footage. These two are bigger, and so I kind of felt comfortable with 123. Do I think that maybe later on I might be able to get to the 134s and the 139s or 125? Yeah, I might be able to do that. It depends on what comps are there and what buyer comes in and things like that, of course. But when you're starting off, you don't start there. You start off with a lower amount so that way you're protected. And so you're looking at this whole scenario here and you're saying, hey, you know what is this thing cash flow at to? What's my downside risk protection? When you're analyzing your market, your flip deals, you want to understand what happens if this whole thing blows up in my face and I can't get this thing sold because I have a market crash that happens right in the middle of this. So, when you're going through and analyzing these, this one in particular, I put it at $11.95 a month. That's about right where I'm looking here as far as the comps go, as far as the averages go. And then we even have the property taxes for that area and the insurance built in and the cap rate built into this formula. So this is like a 7.37 cap at a $123,000 value, for example. Okay? So then you want to go into your actual flip numbers. Okay? So this is the mailers piece, or the wholesale piece. Let me go over to like lending, for example. This is the old spreadsheet. Let me go to the new one. Here we go. So in this case, if this property value is worth $135 and it rents for $13.95, on my summary here, I have, if my rehab is $45,000, and I'll get into the rehab in a second, but if my rehab is $45,000, I might have, I'm going to go through and change this to lending so it's more simpler. I have my overhead costs built into this. But on the lending side, you're looking at $45,000 in rehab, interest expense for at least 4 months. It could be up to 6 if you're not efficient at what you're doing or you are working on a bigger project. Okay. You also have purchase closing costs, appraisal, inspection, insurance, utilities, and permits. Okay. So you have your total costs before your purchase price. Okay, before your purchase, and then you have your sale price. You back into this to where you have your commissions, closing costs coming to your gross profit. So 135 minus commissions and closing costs is 125. If your minimum profit, in this case I have it set at 50 for the price here, but if your minimum profit on a deal is at 10%, okay, at $13.5 on a $135,000 house, which is the minimum profit you should be making on a deal. If you're selling a $500,000 house here in California, you should be making $50,000 on that house. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it. A lot of people are pushing it to 6 and 8% in this market, and it's very dangerous to do that at the top of the market when there's volatility and you're starting to see some slowing. Because why is that? It's because if that value goes down by 5% in the meantime, you're real squeezed on that number and you're real close to breaking even or losing money. And you don't want to do that, and you want to have that reserve put aside for that. Okay? So what you're doing here is you're backing into the purchase price. You're saying, hey, my gross profit after sales price minus commission is 125. I have to make a minimum of 13, and then it costing me 53. So you take the 125 minus 13.5 minus the 53 comes up to my purchase price of $58,000. So you're backing in to your purchase price every single time you do this. And so the faster you can analyze the comps and the faster you can analyze the rehabs, you'll know your price right away. And a lot of times you don't know what your price or your rehab is at 45 until you've seen the property. So you'll get a deal in and you're like, great, I got to analyze this, but I'm not going to see it until I won't be able to see the property, so I don't know what the rehab is. Let me go with a general estimate, maybe based on pictures or maybe based on nothing in Google Street View or something, or what someone tells you over the phone. And so you have to just estimate that. You don't know that until you get out to the property and take a look at it. And so you always want to know what your purchase price is before renovation, because these the sellers will ask you, well, what can you pay? And you're going, well, wait a minute. Like, right now I don't know the rehab. I don't want to go tell them $58,000 because they're going to slap me in the face right away and I'm never going to see the property. So you typically want to say, look, if I know I'm at 103 and I think, hey, no matter what, I'm going to spend 20 on this thing in rehab, I might go in and say, I'm about 80. I'm about 80, 83 right now. But but if it needs major renovation, then I got to go take a look at it and see that, and there might be some adjustments for that. But I'm about 80. Are we in the ballpark, or how are we doing on that? I can close in cash closing in 2 weeks. And when you're making these offers, you want to do a multiple offer type transaction, and typically offer cash closing, high earnest money deposit, okay, to get that deal. The second option to do that is seller financing, where you might be able to pay a little bit more because you're not paying for the interest costs on the purchase, for example, and do a seller financing for 6 months. In this market, it's actually important to realize that you can do joint ventures and do splits with those homeowners in a lot of cases. If you can have them move out and turn it into more of a rental property, or have them say they're not living in it anymore, it's not a primary residence. Or you can bring in a professional lender to help you with that transaction. But typically you can go through and say, hey, I'll put up the rehab money on this, I'll start out at this price, and we'll split the rest of the profits up above that, if that makes sense, as long as it's going to make you the amount of money on your rehab dollars. So you have to protect yourself, know how the contracts work, make sure that you have proper collateral on your money. Never do a deal like that unless you have that proper collateral, okay? So this spreadsheet I love because I have a thing here where if I go put in my purchase price. I got you. Question, go ahead.
I get the 58, but okay, I get the 50, but what's the 95 again?
So let me change that back for you. So in this case, the 95 is, or the 103 is the purchase price that I need to get it at before the $45,000. So the difference between these two is $45,000. So that's what that is. So I can go tell a homeowner, I got all my other costs involved here. I know I'm at 100, or 103, for example. But I can go tell a homeowner before I even know the rehab, and they ask you over the phone, hey, where are you at on your number? I can go tell them, hey, I'm at 103 or I'm at 80 because I know there's going to be some rehab on it, or maybe I did a drive-by the outside, couldn't get into it and saw the work on the outside.
Starting number until you see it.
Right, and that's important because otherwise you're not getting your foot in that door in the first place, right? They're going to say, well, I don't even want you to come to my house. And so you don't have the chance to build a rapport with them and sit there for an hour and talk with them and, BS with them and solve every one of their problems, because really the trick to buying properties at a below discount, it's not always about the price. And it sounds like I'm crazy, but it really isn't. It's where are they going to move? How do they have moving costs covered? What's going to happen to them in the meantime? Can you put them in a better situation? Can you get all their credit card debt paid off? Put them in a brand new rental with 3 months or a year of mortgage payments or a rental paid, and change that scenario for them. Or you want to find what their problems are and solve their problems. Any way you can. If you can't solve their problems, you're not getting the house. Because they're not going to trade the price for that value that you're giving. Question.
Okay, so obviously if you're dealing with a homeowner, it's great, but if you're dealing with a property that's on the MLS, that's what makes it more difficult, right?
Yeah, when you're dealing with the property, so whenever you're going directly to the source, it's much more viable that you're going to actually get that deal, of course. As soon as they go to a realtor or they go and get professional advice from somebody outside, they're going to go sell it at a higher value and sell that thing. But the reasons they don't go to a realtor is because there's major distress. Maybe all of a sudden, they weren't ready to sell because they're just trying to hang on, and then their credit cards are done. They're just completely maxed out. They have no cash, and they're really desperate at that point to get it done. And that's when you can help them with that. And you can say, look, I'll give you cash closing in a week if you need to, or 2 weeks if you need to, and have this thing handled for you. So there's a lot of, and a lot of times that first phone call that you make, it's not necessarily, they may not be ready there. They may say, look, I got 6 more months of leeway here. I'm going to come in here and wait. And then they call you back in 6 months. So that follow-up is really important to understand and continue. Make sense? Any other questions in the meantime on that piece? Cool. Let me know if you guys have questions as they come up. Yeah.
So there are circumstances where getting a deal on the MLS works out. The thought that occurs to me is perhaps it's a bank-owned property. Because banks are not emotional. They've got a number, and as long as you get them there, which could be dramatically less than a retail seller, what they want. So what are some other situations on the MLS where you'll actually be able to pull the thing over the finish line?
So the MLS is all about a percentages game. You have to be offering after offering after offering. And I know people that have offered on a lot and haven't gotten anything in California or in competitive markets. But you have to be constantly going and marketing, and making offer after offer after offer, cash closing, 2 weeks, $10,000 earnest money, or higher if it's in California, for example, maybe $20,000. Then making it so that, always put a contingency for inspection in place in case, you want to back out afterwards or something like that after you see the property. But make sure you can go through and put those extra incentives involved. But it's offer after offer after offer. It's, going through and every single deal that comes out on the MLS, reviewing it immediately and making that offer right away, and constantly doing it. It's all percentages.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is we look at stuff that's been on the market for at least 30 days or something like that. Anything that you can search, distress, fixer, or whatever, you put in days on the market. So, like, I work for an investment firm. We buy properties all the time. And I put in about 150 offers a week. And I'll probably get one a month doing it. But I look at the 30 days, and then as Matt said, as soon as you see something, if I see something on the market, I hit the MLS in 1 day, I'm not going to worry about it. Because in this market, you're going to have, especially if it's distressed, everybody see it, you're going to have 40 people offering on it. So if it's been a little while, maybe 30 days or more, then it's a possibility they need to sell, they're going to do a price drop, anything like that. You can even do set the parameters for price drops. And then as soon as you do it, contact. You really have to continue to contact the agent, and you have to be fervent about it and do it constantly. Every 2 days, hey, what's up with this property? I put an offer in. Because then if they see the persistence, then they kind of put you in front of the line.
And those types of things really work. On the MLS, if you're going through, and I've gotten properties by writing letters with my family on the letter after I've made the offer, saying, hey, this is what we want on the property. This is us. We want to move in. So, and I swear I'm going to pay my son for marketing money and find a deduction in that somewhere. So, when you're dealing with these, it really does come down to persistence, maximum number of offers, and really telling that realtor why, because they may look at you like you're crazy when you come in, $50,000 below they're asking, and they're like, what are you doing? There's all these people that are paying, all these other people that are willing to pay way more. And you're like, hey, they're doing their numbers wrong. They're going to be gone pretty soon. Because and there's a lot of people that are doing that. The only way they can squeeze out real numbers on that is if they're doing the work themselves, or they're their own contractor, they're their own realtor, and they have their own capital. So those 3 things cut out cost. Otherwise, the numbers are what the numbers are, unless they have a unique situation where they already have a buyer lined up or something different there.
In which case, if they're doing that, they're just buying a job.
Yeah, they're buying a job in that case, right? And they're trading their time for their money. And you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be going and doing that. You want to make sure those things are handled, because you could have opportunity costs of putting your money somewhere else, in that case. So you want to charge, even if you're putting your own money in, pretend like you're paying yourself interest. If you're acting as a realtor, you better put the cost in there, and it should work that way too, because you got to do the realtor work. So you're basically just building your own income streams if you're doing that. So, or building your own, labor in there. So that being said, let's go by the drive-by sheet really quick that I usually use. Okay, so this is like an example of one of the sheets that I think. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So we usually have multiple inspections that happen. So the process when you're going out and you're analyzing a deal is you get a call in, right? We track our calls through a system called CallRail and a system called Podio. It tracks the calls, it puts them into Podio. We have our lead processors processing these things. As soon as that lead comes in, we're trying to call them back or get them on the phone or answer it live. And as soon as possible, we're trying to get out to the property to meet and do an appointment. The first thing, I don't even care about the pricing. I just want to get the appointment. So I can go talk with the homeowners, or my team can go talk with the homeowners directly. So, or if it's a wholesaler, how fast can you get in there before they start shopping into all the other people involved as well? You know, like each person is a little bit different. It's about speed of getting out there, because you can't make that final decision without actually seeing the property. So you don't care what the numbers are on the flip scenario unless you're buying in the hood and don't want to buy that property and you're like, that's a too low end, I don't want to deal with it, or something outside of your ballpark. So what you want to do is be able to get out, get this appointment scheduled, and in the meantime, before the appointment time and you actually getting to the property, you want to be able to analyze it just like I showed you on the market value and be able to say, hey, that's my price before rehab, you know, the $100,000. So you're out there with a contract in hand, ready to go, and you're able to go say, hey, I walked through the property, I outlined it, an exterior, interior, and other, which I'll kind of go through, and then you say, here's my price. There's a contract for my price. And here's my numbers. This is what I'm seeing. I got to make a minimum of 10%. That's very, a little bit more what a realtor makes. And what can I do to add that value to be able to get that price? What do you need to make this work for you? And be there with that offer in hand. So you want to go through this thing and with a fine-tooth comb and find everything that you're going to need to fix to get into that top quality shape. Okay, and this is the hardest part. Okay, the comps. The numbers are there. It's an art. It's not a science. It's as much of a science as you can, but it's still an art, right? There's some weird layouts or some quirks with a lot of properties. But when you're dealing with a rehab, you have to know the materials you're buying. You have to know the market that you're in so that you know what the cost structure is there. Because if you don't know the markets you're in, California pricing is way different than Tennessee pricing, right? So with labor and materials can be similar, but depends on how high end or low end that pricing is. Sales tax, all that kind of stuff adds up in different ways. So, question?
That's why, like in Tennessee or in any of the cash flow markets, my buyers are all just landlords, because they're not factoring in all those external holding costs. Is it true that in some areas in Memphis, to get a rental up to date, it's like $10 per square foot?
You can't do it that way. So my average cost per square foot used to be like 20, and now it's can be up to 35 in some cases. Construction costs have gone through the roof. I don't know if it's the tariffs or what the hell it is. The construction costs are going through the roof, and it's because labor is tight too. Labor is if they're active and they're getting rehabs, then it's. And they're busy, then you're not gonna be able to find the people that are getting constant work from other people. Like the guys like me that do 5 a month. I got crews that ain't going anywhere because they love me, because here's 3 a month that you get and 2 a month that you get, and I got multiple crews out there that just always want deals, and so want deals to work on, and they know that it's going to be there from me. They don't care as much about the homeowner. They might make more on the homeowner, but that means they go market for the next job, and market for the next job, and market for the next job. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times they want to go with the really good people will go with the people that are going to give them volume. So if you can show them that you're going to give them volume, and you'll do this every time with them, and say, I want to set the system up for you so that way, we're streamlined and we're able to do this every time. I want you to know exactly how I want to rehab a property. That's key. And you want to be very careful not to ever give contractors money up front. Okay? So we control all the materials ourselves on these jobs, where we have SKU numbers that we line out for every aspect, and we order it from Lowe's or different sources, and we have it waiting for us on a pallet for that job, and we control all of that. Usually our contractors might spend a couple $100 worth of materials that maybe we missed. There's some minor things they need or something like that, and then we have a rehab manager managing them to say, hey, why'd you buy all those outlets? We got a bunch of them from the last job, on the last pack that you bought, or the last set you bought. We need those, I kind of a break most of the time when I see the candy bars and the drinks on there and stuff like that. it's Memphis, and I would not want to do rehabs in Memphis because it's so damn hot or cold, you know, that you're just like, I'm about to go bring them beer if it wasn't going to cost me liability, you know. But you know, you feel real bad when you go into houses. I get sick during the winter or the summer if I'm going in and out of the cold or hot car and then going into the house or an attic constantly because you're constantly going in and out of cold and hot temperature. I feel real bad for the contractors. They're going into a house with no AC yet. It's freezing or super hot in an attic or underneath the house. With the spiders in Memphis, I would not be getting into that house. Those things are like this, and you're like, no, I'm done. You know, so, but you know, that's when you have major respect for the guys that do that work because it is not easy. My friends call me that are out there. They call me keyboard warrior because I'm like, nah, dude, like you go do that. I don't care how much it costs. Just go do it. You know, so because it's not fun to deal with. So. And you want to have construction contracts in place as well for your jobs so that way, you know, they're penalized for going overtime and getting bonuses for going under time. And you want to be able to make sure that you understand what insurance they have, what they have workers' comp, do they have general liability coverage? How good are they with their money? Do they have reserves right now to front materials or labor in the meantime before they bill you? You know, what are those things that you have to mitigate that contractors can steal from you? Question here.
I just want to know what a wholesaler was.
Oh, wholesaler is somebody that basically gets a property under contract from a homeowner at a good deal and then goes and resells it to someone like me that's a flipper that's going to renovate it and resell it. So maybe if my minimum profit, you know, was $13,500 on that deal, for example, they might get it for $10,000 underneath that and then go sell it to me for $10,000 more and make that profit, you know, or $5,000 or whatever it is, you know. So they're basically doing, a lot of people want to go and become wholesalers, but in reality, you have to know the same things you're doing when you're rehabbing it. So they just want out before they can go. Most of the time, wholesalers don't have the money to close, or they don't want to because it's too thin, or they don't want to rehab it, and so they're like, cool, I'll just take $5,000 or $10,000 off the top and then give it to somebody else. And it's a good strategy to use, but you still need to know how to analyze your comps. You still need to know how your rehab gets analyzed, because one of the biggest problems with wholesalers is that neither one of those are right, ever. Because their job is, I'm going to go push it and say that 123 house is worth 135 because they saw two comps that happen to hit that, you know, and don't know anything about it, or, you know, and they see one comp or two comps and they're like, yeah, top dollar, and then they try to say, oh yeah, your rehab's only 10. I'm like, my rehab's never been 10, you know? So I'm like, get out of here with that stuff, you know? And you realize very quickly, you know, a rehab for 10 is paint on the inside and hide everything else, you know? So it's not, no AC units, no AC units in Memphis are like $4,000, you know? So a roof is 5 to 10 depending on the cost. So you can see here where each one of these, I actually have formulas built in based on the square footage involved, based on our typical costs, but it's also an overestimate. So if it's a new roof, you know, it shows 0 here. If it needs full replacement or repairs, it's just a general estimate of what these costs are. And then we go through afterwards, after we get all the pictures back and everything, and they try to get it under contract, we'll go through and analyze it again and say, you know what? I think my rehab numbers are a little less. I'm going to go plug in based on our experience what these real numbers are on the exterior, the interior here, and then the other. So HVAC, foundation, framing, plumbing, demo, water heater, you know, electric meter, rehab management, and always put a rehab buffer in place. I always put a rehab management piece in place too, because I don't want to be the one going and doing that, following up with contractors. I had a contractor one time tell me that he was asking me how he gets audited financial statements so that he can go bid on a big commercial job. And I asked him, well, how do you know where your books are now? How do you know how you're doing financially? And he tells me, well, if I got money in the bank, then I'm doing okay. I'm like, he just got a $30,000 payment from somebody for a rehab and spending it on everything else. And you realize very quickly, people don't know how to manage their money. This is 90% of people or more, and it's because nobody's taught this. Nobody's taught proper budgeting and proper funds control when you're dealing with multiple rehabs. You know, even the guys that are the professionals run into problems because they're doing too much volume and they run out of reserves, and maybe they've been the guys their whole life that's been in the field and, you know, running around making contracts and doing that stuff. So if you know your math, you have a far greater advantage of everybody involved. And so the way we track our rehabs is This is another scary spreadsheet, I'm sorry. So let me make this bigger. So we have this here where this section is the profitability tracker, this is the rehab tracker, and over here is the funding tracker. So this basically says, hey, here's all the key metrics of the job, including the purchase date, the construction start date, and things like that involved. And then here's the timing, which the interest calculations just happen to be built into this. Here's all your closing costs and your purchase costs and things like that. So in this particular deal, I had this at like $50,000. And so, you're looking at, here's my total purchase. And then you have interest paid, interest due, any other miscellaneous costs, what your rehab is, what your rehab budget is, what you paid, and what's remaining as well, and then your expected price coming to your profitability. So I have my borrowers, when we're lending money, fill this section out and tell me what their profits are expected to be. And then during the process, they come in and they start lining out everything that they spend, including the roof, the electrical, HVAC, and these categories flow up here to these categories into the date paid column here. So this is the original estimate, any adjustments that get made coming to an adjusted bid, and then you have your amount paid and amount to be paid. It's all formula basically in this case. But you want to, if you're doing rehabs, you better track this, because if all of a sudden, you have some change orders down here that take your bid from 45 to 48,000 and you don't have the cash for it, you're stuck and you're out of money. What happens if it goes over budget? So and so you want to be tracking everything that's paid. You want to track your utility payments. You want to track any rent received. You want to track your mortgage payments. I have this set up for first, second, and third position mortgages. And so we went through the profitability tracker and the rehab tracker. We also have the funding tracker. So, if you have mortgages in first, second, and third position, this is just set up for example purposes at 12% in a point, and it's held in reserve for 3 months, and you have your rehab funds that you're slowly drawing on as far as construction, because most construction lenders, if they're going to give you the money for it, they're going to say, you put up the money first, go pay that $10,000, show me what you paid, and then I'm going to reimburse you for that $10,000. So you have to have some sort of reserve set aside for this, so that you can actually make sure that you're really have enough funds. So at the end of the day, what happens, what I built this for was total spent, total received to date, coming from, the total draws. Here's how much they were paid, or what was remaining out of the deal. So if they paid 73 and they only got 70, then they're in it for 2,900 right now. Here's what's remaining, and here's what they would need to complete that project. So at all times, my borrowers know, and you should know too, exactly how much cash you are going to need to finish that deal. And make sure you have extra for buffers in case things happen. Okay? So this is all the math behind it, and I know this is really a lot of crap that you guys probably are like, whoa, that's too much. So, question in the back, and I'll come to you.
So that basically, do you have like a suggested percentage of incidental or money set aside?
Typically, I would say, we know our numbers really well, so I'm comfortable with like $3,000 on these rehabs. But so for my numbers for that, but if I'm doing a different deal in a different market or something like that, I would suggest 5 to 10% at a minimum. So 10% if you're newer and not sure about what you're doing, or you're just not seeing, you may miss part of the rehab or something. Question over here.
Okay, so sorry, I have a number of questions.
No problem.
So when you're putting together your rehab budget, and then when you have stuff come up, you end up running up, basically you're about to go over your budget. What's the first thing? Some rehabs you can't do everything you want to do. You got to pick and choose, right? So generally, what do you cut first?
You only pick and choose if the numbers aren't going to work, right? So if the numbers on the deal are not going to work, you start picking and choosing to try to cut that down, and realize when you start cutting that down, your market value is going to suffer, right? So we were just talking about an AC unit, not putting in a central AC into a unit, but someone's going to pay $10,000 more for a central AC system in a house very easily, but it might cost you $10,000 as well to go put in an AC system, exactly, to go put that into a house. So, so when it comes to, what are the first things you do? It's not necessarily to cut it out. It's to say, okay, what are my numbers? Am I right on my market value, or is there room there? Is there any way that I can cut out any other expenses or get this thing done faster, or is it solved by you not having the money is not the right reason to cut things out, okay? The numbers not working on your spread is probably the only reason to cut things out, and you're going to probably suffer your market value for more than that anyway. So I would suggest never cutting things out. And if you run into a situation where all of a sudden, you got a $10,000 overage, and you're like, great, the numbers don't work anymore. All of a sudden the deal's dead. You still want to finish it so you don't lose enough. You don't lose more, So and go on to the next one and break even or lose a little bit of money on that. But find a way to bring in other money, whether it's another investor involved in second position or a family friend that's going to put the money in and help, and you take that hit for your investor if it's going to come at a loss. You want to be real careful not to do it at that top-notch rehab if your margins are too thin, because you could all of a sudden switch you 20,000 the opposite way just from not one major thing, or 10,000 the opposite way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So basically, you go in with the expectation that you're going to complete the entire rehab to exactly what you want it to be, and if you run an overage, then you run it over. If you're going to finish it with what you.
Yeah, because the way to get the most money out of that deal is typically to go through and finish it. Now, at the other side of things, there's other strategies, like with Jasmine, when she forecloses on a house because of a mortgage, it's a lot easier in the note business to just create a new note out of it and not do anything to it and say, look, I don't care what my margins are, I'm going to go resell it for X amount more because to someone else, and have this homeowner fix it up so I don't have to deal with it. It's an awesome strategy to use. And on those deals that you run into where maybe you closed escrow and you maybe started a little bit of work and realized, oh crap, I'm in over my head on this, and this is going to be, I'm going to be in for too much or something. Stop right there and reassess, what are my options? Option one, sell it as is. Option two, sell it on financing. You might get more money for it. I've done that multiple times when you run into an issue. So,
I'm just going to add to what you're saying, just finish the project no matter what. Because I do get the phone calls from your lenders who say, my great renovator can't finish the project, how much can you buy another one for, right? So don't leave them in that situation. If you can get it done and maybe take a hit one time, I had to put my $50 paycheck for a month of reputation, right?
Yeah. If you take that hit for your lender and say, hey, I lost money on this, but I put my money in, they're going to go to bat for you again because they know that you finished that, took the hit yourself for them. Like you do that for your private investors as well, not just the professionals. So never ever borrow money from a private investor and lose their money, because that's part of their life. That's hours of their life, right, that they're losing. So anything else?
Yes. Also, how do you approach permitting? I know permitting is kind of different depending on the city, but do you generally pull all your permits up front, or do you just do the job and ask for forgiveness?
No.
So like permitting is like a big headache.
Look, if you're reselling the property and you're doing a major renovation, you should get the permits and get it done. There's no reason not to. It's not that expensive to get the permits unless you're dealing with adding square footage in which you've got school fees and all that kind of fun stuff to deal with. So always get the permitting. If you're dealing with your own house and you're changing a toilet, California wants you to pull a permit for it. I'm libertarian in that way. I'm like, stay away from me. I don't care about you. Leave me alone. But, that's a minor risk that I'm willing to take personally. And I wouldn't take it if you're trying to resell that property because you need to have proper permits and everything.
Like, at what point in time are you generally pulling permits? Like at the very beginning of the project, or are
Yeah.
you like?
Yeah, in the beginning of the project, and I have, or throughout it as the construction goes on, or as that piece gets finished. If you're doing all plumbing, then you're going to do that right away. Typically, same thing with electrical while the walls are open or whatever. And then later on, if you're installing a HVAC system outside, you might pull a new permit for that. But most of the time, it depends on the city what they require of you. As well. So, make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Question here.
So, if you have one or two partners in your deal, what are some of the best ways to structure that partnership?
To structure a partnership on one single flip? Okay, so the first way is to not have a partnership and do it all yourself and make the most amount of money out of it, right? So, because whenever you do a joint venture, it's because you don't have all the resources you need to do that deal, right? You might not have all the money, and you're like, well, the only way someone's going to put up all the money is if they partner with me on this. me as a hard money lender or private money lender, I'll go through and I say private money lender so you guys don't think I'm super expensive over everybody else. But so no, but me as a hard money lender, I go through and look at each deal independently and say, how much cash do you have to put in this deal? Do you have 10 to 15% to put down in the deal as far as your total hard costs on this, so that I know that you have some skin in the game? And if they don't, usually I'm not going to partner with somebody right away on a new deal and a brand new relationship. But if I have a good relationship with them and I've been doing business with them over time, that's when I'll come in and say, okay, hey, I'll put a first position lien in place at this loan to value, but then any extra money that you don't have, I'll put it up. But I'm going to control the deal, and we're going to do a joint venture. I'm going to take a percentage of the back-end profits for doing that. You know, I might give them a percentage for finding the deal, give them a percentage for running it, doing all the work, and then I take a percentage from taking that extra risk on top of it. Makes sense? But it's going to hurt. You know, it's not going to be cheap when you got to go above what you're comfortable with, you know, in a situation like that. And the way to counterbalance the risk there is to have the control, maybe have the property in my name or something like that, or have, you know, some sort of collateral interest where I can take over the property right away if I needed to, you know. So those types of things help with that risk mitigation, and I won't do it if it's a brand new relationship or something, you know. The other structures is to do, you know, you can typically have a general partnership or an LLC set up where it's owned in an LLC and everybody are people that are involved are members of that LLC. You have to be very careful when you're raising money. When you're pooling investor money together, it can be considered a security if they are passive in nature and all they're doing is putting up money. So typically, when you're dealing with partners, you want to be very careful when you're dealing with that, because you want to watch out for those securities laws where they need to be actively involved in that flip with you to not have it be necessarily considered a security. Now, I'm not an attorney, Bill, but anybody else in the room that wants to sue me over this, go to an actual securities attorney that knows this stuff, okay? So don't take my word for it, but I'm just telling you the general understanding of when you're pooling money together, make sure that, you know, they have that active involvement involved there. And if they're not, you better go to the right licensing channels there. If you're borrowing money on a property in California, or you're lending money on a property in California, there's lending laws and things like that you want to be careful of too. If you're borrowing the money on your flip, there might be servicing laws you have to be careful of. If you're lending the money to another flipper, then you want to be in California, then typically you need to be a licensed broker to do that. You know, unless you have a licensed broker involved in the transaction that's going to take a point or something like that for doing it from you. California is a different animal in a lot of different states. A lot of different states you don't need to be a broker, but it doesn't shock you about California. Everybody in the Midwest that I tell is from California. I tell them I'm from California. I'm like, sorry, don't hold it against me. I'm not crazy, I promise. You know, so but it's interesting because everybody in the Midwest thinks that California is everybody there is crazy for some reason. I'm like, okay, whatever, you know. But it's interesting. So, but yeah, those types of structures, partnerships, first and second position loans are great ways to go, but you want to be very careful about the second position. And if you're ever lending in second position, you better know that the first is getting paid every time, and you should be more experienced if you're going to do these second position type loans, so that you know how to mitigate the risk if the first goes into foreclosure and save your money in that way. And you should be able to, if they do default on the first, you should have some sort of way to pay off that first mortgage so that way you protect your money. I don't care if it's some other resource outside that can just bring in money and pay it off, or if you have your own money to go pay that off as well. You know, have some sort of a backup in case that happens. Make sense? Okay, so I went and I'm going to show you a couple other quick things. So the fun deals that we've had to deal with over a period of time. So these types of documents help considerably when you are rehabbing a property, okay? So understanding what these different costs are involved and knowing, hey, here's my exterior, screen door, bricks, the house numbers, the paint, the mailbox, the material and the labor and the tax for each one of these things. Breaking this down to this kind of detail, at least on some deals, you know, you saw the quick and dirty one that I did. Most of the time that's pretty reasonable. You don't need to do this for every one of your deals. Now, the benefits of doing this type of structure is you start to understand what the costs are on everything in your market. So a lot of times when you're first getting started, you want to break down the exterior of each room of the house. What are these things going to cost? Talk to the contractor saying, hey, how much does the paint cost out of this? Is it $5,000? Okay, great. How many hours of labor and how many guys do you have doing that? What's the paint cost? Just to get an understanding of what they generally think. Because are they charging you $100 an hour? Or are they charging you $20 an hour for that labor? You know, you want to gauge those different aspects. This is how you stop a contractor from stealing from you, right? Is to go through and understand what things really cost. And they can still steal from you. So, you know, at that point, you know, you just want to be very, very careful and understand these things and go through this. So garage, you can see we have the wall, the ceiling, the trim, you know, cleaning the floors, the outlets and all that kind of stuff, the switch covers, the living room, the kitchen, all of this different stuff, the laundry room, all coming to a final bid for every single one of these things. And then we have the mechanical and the miscellaneous where the utility bills, so we use on all our stuff, we use quick set or smart locks where you can just change the key. These are rentals, so we never have to change a lock again when we go in there and put one of these smart locks on there, and then you basically can go use a tool and change the key with that tool and never have to do that. Never have to actually use a locksmith every single time, you know, to come out there. So landscaping, roof, all the major, you know, gutters. A lot of times gutters are very important on rental properties specifically because in the Midwest, these things come right off the roof directly to the ground and can mess up your foundation. And so gutters can be, you know, really important for stopping that. At the same time, in the Midwest, they can also rot out your fascia too, because you got water just sitting there, you know, on those things, especially if they're full, you know, full of debris because there's tons of trees. You know, don't let it fool you either. Trees don't mean that it's a good area in the Midwest. I went through Memphis and the property manager took me during the day on a weekday instead of at night or on a weekend, and I realized how many crackheads were in the neighborhood, you know, so very quickly after at night. So, but so you can come up with this with your contingency and your total here. But this is a great way to do this. If you guys want, I'll email you this type of thing so you guys can see the breakdown. I'll even take some screenshots of the main pieces of that spreadsheet so that you guys can utilize that if you want for your own formatting if you're trying to do your own flips. Okay? Let's see here. So this is important as well. Whenever we do one of these rehabs, we actually go get a layout. This is from a software called Punch. And what happens is this software, this is an easier version because we kind of already know an easier layout. A lot of times you can go through and you get every outlet you can mark inside this thing in that software. You can go through and find every door, every window, and so you start counting every room. You go through every room now and make sure that bid matches, and you know exactly what these things cost consistently. So you start to price things out that way, and it's great for selling the property too. Whenever we're selling a property, we go put this on there too, because people want to know what the layout looks like. They don't want to just guess half the time, and people right now are shopping online. So you go put that on a rental listing or on an MLS listing or, you know, an online listing on the market, and it really does help with the sale. Okay, unless you have a bad layout, then don't put it on there. Let's see. So I'm going to get into, so this was an example of one of the appraisals that I wanted to show you guys when going through this. So this is an appraisal we had. Contract price was $110 on this thing, and you can see here they had 122, 115, and 128. Now my square footage was 1,000 square feet or 1,100 square feet. This is 1331. This is 1245. This is 1339. A little bit bigger. So they're giving price adjustments here. So you want to look at this and say 9,200 is a difference. What's the difference between these two square footages here, you know, and 230 square feet? What is that cost per square foot difference that they're charging you for? So you understand what they're doing in that market. You may be a property in Orange County and you want to go talk to an appraiser and say, what is your cost per square foot adjustment that you make? Is it $25 a square foot like I just showed you in that example? Or is it, you know, $150 a square foot in Orange County somewhere, right? Or more. So those numbers are totally different. They ding you for beds and bath, and every appraiser is different. So every appraiser is going to make small adjustments differently, and these are the things you want to dispute if you have an issue. You want to look at this. What's the cost per... I've seen them where, this one's $25 a square foot, and this one's $30, and this one's $35. And you're going, where did this number come from? And then you go look at your square footage piece that you just pulled when you did your punch layout, and you see that it's 1201 square feet or something, and they did their math wrong, on that. So these are the little things you're looking at when you're looking at the actual comps. Okay, and you're also looking at how far away these things were. This is 0.5 miles away. This one's 0.32, 0.39 miles. Those are all close comps. He came in at 110, 109, and 117. And usually if you bring them those comps, they're going to come in and hit your number as best they can, unless they're just investor haters. So, which does happen. And then they always get 3 backup comps as well on this thing. It's always further down on the list, of course. Of course, I'm not seeing it here. Okay, so 3 backup comps, 107, 139.9, and 142. And this is, I don't know why this one's this is about the same distance. This is 0.2 miles away, 0.46 miles away. So they just felt like they were, not as good a comps. And so they came in at the 110 value. The unique situation about this property is I sold it to a friend of mine that I made $15,000 on the sale, on the $110,000 property. And then I subleased it from my friend so I could do short-term rentals on it. And I showed him the first 3 months showing full occupancy of this thing. And I said, thank God I signed that 10-year no rate increase lease with my management company that's managing it for you. He's like, I hate you. I'm going to make you evict me out of my own house and go there and stay at your Airbnb. He told me the judge is going to look at us like, what the hell's wrong with you people? You have way too much time on your hands. So, but it's really interesting, these different strategies you can utilize. And, we're making $5,000 a year off of this on a $15,000 investment, and we guarantee his rents. We subleased it from him. So, it's really interesting. It's a win-win for him because on short-term rentals, you inspect that property every single time. So you don't have turn costs most of the time. If someone punches a hole in the wall, you fix it, you bill it for them immediately. If there's a problem with, you have major preventative maintenance like HVAC systems and roofs and those types of things to be careful about. But, it's a great strategy in certain areas, but you better make sure the numbers are good and start slow because usually first 6 months are not as profitable. So, here's an example. I wanted to show you guys an example of one of the multifamily rehabs that we're doing right now so that you guys can see the level of detail that has to go into this sometimes when you're doing these. So in this one, you're looking at all the exterior, same type of deal we did before, but a little bit more extensive. This one was built in like 1922. So this is a 15-unit building that we turned into 18 units, but building interior. You have a lot more, items here than I had on that other single-family home aspect. Like washers and dryers are a lot more expensive in these units. So, building electrical, mechanical, and plumbing, site improvements for the asphalt and things like that, the general conditions. And normally when you're doing this, and this is a $1.6 million renovation, and the contractor's making $81,000 in profit on the deal for doing this. And then you have your additional costs involved, which are bank charges, closing attorney fees, insurance, interest, legal fees, your purchase price. I bought this building for $400,000. We're going to basically be in it for about 1.7. It should actually be less than that, like 1.65, because I buffered it. And it should be worth about 2.2 when we're finished. But, initially when we first started this thing, this is what it looked like on the inside for the framing. Yeah. There was fire damage inside the plaster and things like that. I mean, it was a mess. So you can see we had to reframe this entire thing here. It is a mess, and that is a scary project. The contractor that did this said he'd much rather build new. So now, everything is brand new. This took a long time to shore up the subfloors and things like that to get all that stuff done. But you can see how extensive this can get when that's a lot of wood, that you have to replace. So,
what would it have cost to build?
Yeah, probably the same price, you know, but I didn't know this, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. So, I mean, it cost us an extra $100,000 in framing, but at the end of the day, we got 3 more units out of it, so I was like, oh, great, no problem. As long as I can get my 3 more units, that adds an extra 90 to $100,000 a unit, I'm good, you know? So, and then you always run into situations like this where you have problems on rental properties. And the tenant was inside this property. So I'm like around 6 foot and I stand like here on this tree. This tree was farther away from the property than it actually looks. But it was so top heavy when it was like 70 mile per hour winds that it was crazy. And that, you know, it cost us about $65 to reframe, and we got a good insurance payout on it. And went and resold the property, and I'm probably going to rebuy it again now too for like the second time, which is awesome. So they bought it in like 2012 and it went up in price, and I think I can get it for around the same price and resell it again. But yeah, the fun stuff. So my manager gave the tenant a hug and found him a hotel. Thank God they didn't sue us, but they were in the other side of the house. So luckily they got free rent for a while, which was totally fine. You know, they were happy with the whole situation. But yeah, it was.
Insurance paid for that?
Yeah, insurance paid for all of it. Yeah, so we made sure that bid was really buffered to make sure we get that money back, because it was a big mess. But yeah, and we had to pay for the neighbor's car. Of course, they said that they told us that there was like one branch on this car that like scratched the car, and they're like, yeah, it's totaled. We need a new car. You're like, get out of here with this stuff, you know? Like, it's like amazing, you know? So yeah. You're like, they're like, we need $40,000 car now. Great, you know? So, but yeah, you see the fun stuff that goes into this business, right? When you're doing this. So the whole thing ended up, for the reframing of the whole thing and all that stuff, it ended up being like $75,000. So, and then we got loss of rents and everything else, so it wasn't as bad as it looked in that situation. I was just glad the liability wasn't there. So, question here.
One thing that caught me by surprise early on was the cost to remove a tree that I didn't even notice, you know, when I bought the house, because it was kind of in the margin. It really wasn't on the property exactly, but the city would remove it. It was thousands of dollars.
Yeah, once you have when you have a really good insurance, you know, team member, they train you on all that stuff. Cut everything away. Look for dead trees.
Yeah.
Look for, because those trees cost you a lot of maintenance down the line. You got to do tree trimming, you know, down the line. Sometimes, you know, a big tree can cost you $5,000. You know, so I mean, you see these guys getting up on these trees, and sometimes they're up there hanging up there. Like, you guys are crazy. Like, that's hazard pay, in my opinion. You know, so it makes a lot of sense. And I was like, we got to get a tree company. These guys make a ton doing that stuff. But I wouldn't want to be up there with those, you know, spikes on your feet with a rope on the other side, 50 feet up that tree. That'd be like, no, it's not happening. And you got to be careful. And they use pulleys and ropes. They'll tie it up and then cut it off and use the pulley on another branch. And otherwise, you're using a big machine to do all this stuff. So the next piece is, you know, we talked about the comparable sales. We talked about the renovation estimate here. What are we doing on time? Okay, we're okay. We got about 20 more minutes. So we talked a little bit about raising capital, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. And then let's talk about finding these deals in the first place, okay? So, you know, you saw all the costs involved with the actual purchase of a normal house. You didn't see the costs involved in the systems to market for the houses. So you have to actually go through and set up systems to do this, especially in this market. It's very hard. And, you know, how are you going to review 100 of these things a month, right? Unless you have deal flow, unless you have people coming to you constantly with deals, okay? So what that means is a lot of relationship development and a lot of actual follow-up with those leads initially. So you shouldn't go through and start pay-by-click marketing and start direct mail and start the paid stuff before you can master how to analyze these things in 15 minutes. Before you can master how to actually get out to that property same day or next day, or go through and understand your rehab bids very quickly and get these things done, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and wasting money. Because unless you got that system down, your close ratio is going to be very tough. And we still have a hard time in this market with direct mail, where we're retooling our stuff, where you're constantly going through and retooling your marketing to see what's going to work and not work. Right now we're cutting out some of the direct mail that's really, really slow in this kind of a market because it's very heavy, and we're starting to go into more higher quality direct mail pieces where we can cross-reference someone that has high credit card balances or high or delinquent property taxes and a delinquent mortgage and an estate issue or other distress situations, and do high quality mailers like birthday cards and things like that to them where they're going to open it up. I even contemplated putting $5 gift cards to Starbucks in there and stuff like that on 200 mailers, just because it's about, are they going to call you? How do they get back to you? What are the ways you're going to stand out and get that call ringing? So before you go do that strategy, a lot of it comes down to networking. I know a girl out here named Christy Sirwell, very, very professional flipper. She finds a lot of her stuff all through referrals. She does all of this stuff. She does hoarder houses out here, and she specializes in that. And so she finds a lot through the referral base. We started with nothing but referrals, and it's really, really important to understand the importance of that, and how that process works. Who are your referral agents? Who here knows a referral agent? Tell me who would refer you a property.
My probate attorney in Cleveland.
Probate attorneys, awesome.
I refer properties, REOs.
There you go. People that buy notes. Great strategy that no one else is doing to try to buy the property most of the time. So it's starting to get more competitive, but at the same time, they're not necessarily doing it to get the property, which is a really great way and strategy to buy that property.
Contractors that you use.
Contractors. Great source. Anybody else?
On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I spend an hour and a half calling agents. And I tell them, hey, for any off-market or pocket listings, you can represent me. Awesome. And then I say, hey, I'll send a follow-up email. And then I say, when I get them on the phone, I say, this is what I'm looking for, blah, blah, I give my parameters. I'll send you an email once we get off the phone. And then 2 days later, or maybe a week, I don't let a week go by. I call them again. Hey, I just want to see you. This is blah, blah, blah. And that way, they're either going to get tired of it, or they're going to be like, hey, yes, I do have something.
Yeah, and who cares if they get tired of you then? Then they're not finding enough deals. They know you're real if you're calling back and taking the time, And if you're calling agents, this is what's important. You're calling agents. He just said something that's really important, that every Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, if you do this meticulously and consistently for weeks on end, how many different realtor contacts can you put in your database, or contractor contacts, or probate attorneys, or CPAs, or other closing attorneys, or lenders, or any other financial insurance companies that just saw losses, inspectors, code enforcement inspectors as well as normal inspectors. Realtors, brokers, all these people you want to put in a database where you follow up with consistently and stay in their mind. And you're always trying to add value any way you can to them. Whether it's, hey, I found this great article that's coming out in your market, in Missouri or in California or in this specific area that I think might affect you. I thought it'd be valuable. Let me send it to you and follow up with you on that. Now, once you get to the level where you have, a lot, like hundreds of these people, you want to put some sort of automated system in place to add value, but it can't look automated, right? This has got to be a relationship building campaign that you're putting in place here. All these closing agents, you go refer them a couple of people that closes with them. They're going to remember you. You're going to go through and refer an inspector out. They're going to remember you. If you do a walkthrough of one of your properties with your inspector, just picking their brain, hey, can you teach me this? Same thing with the appraisers. Any service providers, you do that and ask for that education, they love to help you with that stuff, and they'll never forget you either. I did this with appraisers in the beginning, and they will help me forever now, because I just wanted to learn from them, and I was like, look, any way I can help you, I'll help you too. And I'll refer them to other people. Say, hey, this lender over here needs an appraisal done. Can you do that for them? or hey, closing attorney, I got this guy that's going to close a package. He needs a really quality closing attorney. Can you help with that? And you can meet a lot of these people at the investment clubs like this in the markets you're doing business in, and find a lot of those different contacts. There's also people here that have deals and find deals that are constantly reviewing. So if you can't go every single week and call agents and line these people up, then you can find other people that find those deals. You're going to give up some profit to do that, right? Especially in this market, it's going to be tough. But at the same time, you can find deals where someone else may not have all the money, right? Like me going out and just trying to lend capital in different ways. I find tons of flips that I'm like, well, if you can't take that down, let me know, because I'm going to make you put 15% in the deal. Otherwise, I just met you, I can't do that. But if you can't do that, let me know and I'll joint venture with you. But I want title in my name on that deal. So if you're going to lose it, don't lose it. I'll fund 100%, but I got to control it, And so, and they'll bring me deals that just they can't do because they don't have the money. They're just stuck, but they're still making some money out of the project, and I'm teaching them a ton of stuff along the way too. A lot of people don't have the rehab spreadsheet and stuff like that I've built to help them track these things, and you'll be amazed how appreciative some of these people are. Question here.
Yeah, and also escrow officers.
Yeah.
Filling deals, and I actually do their reps. A lot of buyers going in, they put a deposit down, looking to buy it. They only have 7 days to sell their home. So we'll be a great source too.
Oh yeah, so anywhere, he's exactly right. Whenever there's distress in a situation, 7 days, closing, that's a distressed situation. So, and there's distressed buyers out there as well when you're selling a property. So a lot of times a distressed buyer is a 1031 exchange buyer or something like that that's coming to the table, and those types of people need to buy a property like right now within 90 days, and sometimes they seem to always come to me for deals when they got a week left before they find the property, and I'm like, there's the best distress there is, It's like, you need a week before you pay $100,000 in tax? Awesome. Here's the property. Buy them all. So it's really interesting when that happens, and if you can show them the cash flow streams and that kind of stuff, it can be really, really valuable. So other marketing techniques to do this stuff. So we talked about, the relationship building here. I would say the first thing you want to do is write down a list of what we just went through. And this is going to be on Facebook live stream here, so you guys can go back to this later. But create that list of your contacts and who you're going to reach out to. Start reaching out to 5 of them in each one of those categories and putting them on a list, and just follow up with those 5 in every category. If you did that consistently, every couple of weeks you're going to follow up with this person, consistent. If it's realtors like that, follow up much more consistently. But you don't want to follow up with an attorney every 3 days. They're going to be like, dude, get the hell away from me. I'm sick of you. You're like costing me billable hours right now, But then they also, the more you help those attorneys, the more you help the different team members involved, the more they think of you immediately when they have a client issue. And they deal with these types of distress situations all the time. The CPAs are seeing how negative cash flow something is, or the major problems a building's having. The probate attorneys see a distress that someone needs to go and sell right away. And so you have to meticulously follow up with them. And every realtor you contact that sends you a deal that doesn't work, show them why it doesn't work and show them the numbers. Because that shows them that you're real. Okay? Other strategies, bandit signs. They work. Sometimes they're illegal, and you got to be careful about that. So you don't always want to do that.
What did you say?
Bandit signs. They're basically just we buy houses signs you see all over the place. So I like to see. I have somebody that I know that goes through, and I've been contemplating doing this. That they go and they see the signs, and they go change the number of the sign, and they have their number, and they go put it over. I'm like, I gotta do that. That's they're like tape. So it's pretty funny. You're like, you didn't have to buy the sign, But I think about that here, and I'm like, I should do that in California because I see them as I'm driving, and I'm like, let me go print out a big number on a Word document, So
I also wanted to mention, if you do offer on the MLS and you don't get the property, it's not the end of it, because what we typically do is we offer, it was sold, sold, if someone came in higher. And then I would always follow up, look, anything else you get, please keep meeting daily banks or whatever. You just want to follow up and leave it open-ended for them to actually send you something else. You just don't want to just walk away from that agent because just because you didn't get that property, you don't want to walk away from the relationship because she may see something in the next.
And ask, that's a great point, because ask if they will be willing to accept an offer in backup position.
Yes.
Because you can come in 25% or more of the time, if not 40, they fall out of escrow. Okay? And sometimes they're in distress. They're moving. Someone's moving in a week, and they're like, I got to get out of here. And you're sitting there with a cash offer with a giant earnest money deposit saying, hey, I'm in backup. I got all my money. Here's my proof of funds already been submitted. I'm ready to go. You need to close? I'm right here. Maybe I'm 50 grand under where you need to be at, but I'm right here. And I'm waiting for you in backup position. That's real powerful when there's distress. And a percentage of those is always going to be in distress. And so making that offer anyways, and like you said, following up with that agent, when they see your proof of funds and saying, make the offer anyways, they see the proof of funds there, they see you're real and you have a cover letter and you're professional and you're showing them, here's my numbers on the deal, this is why I can only pay this. Please don't be upset with me for offering such a little amount when you're talking to an agent, or something. That's a big change. So, make sense?
Yes.
So, door knocking, the driving for dollars and stuff like that, and driving around to different places, looking at vacant housing and stuff. You can go look at vacant listings online and try to go and find out who the owners are of those properties and do mailers to them specifically, or try to find out and call them if you can skip trace them or look them up on title and see who owns it, and go to TLO and find all their information, do the background check or a skip tracing software or something. You can always find people's information that way, and it's a more strategic way. They just went through a vacancy. What does that mean? That means they just had turnover costs, and that hurts. So they were like, damn, I thought I had some good cash flow, but this turnover just cost me $5 grand or $3 grand or $1 grand, and I thought it was going to be better than this, and I'm sick of this, and I don't want to deal with it because they just went through that pain. Maybe they have it rented now, or it's not rented yet. You're calling on those things and saying, hey, are they calling the manager saying, is that one available for sale? Can I buy that house? As well. And do you have any other properties that are available for sale? Do you have any other owners that might want to sell? Property managers are great sources to do that. I'll let you represent me if I'll get you the broker commission or the real estate commission if you help me buy people's houses, So those things work really, really well. So those are some of the great ways to do it. Auction sites are great, but a lot of times right now you're not going to hit the reserve price. It's going to be all a percentages game on the auction sites too. You can pick up a deal here and there on those if you're persistent and constantly reviewing these different auction sites, but a lot of times you might win, but you didn't really win because you didn't hit their reserve price. So, and the reserve price always seems to be ridiculous. So you want to be very careful because a lot of times they don't know what those numbers are. Understanding your statistics is probably the most important thing that I think you can do when you are analyzing properties. So let me see if I have anything here for. Let's see, I don't. So basically, we've been using this this EOS host for mailers, EOShost.com, and they basically send out like 15,000 mailers at a pop, and or usually every 2 weeks we break it up, and you want to track how many calls did you get for that type of mailer, how many appointments did you get for that type of mailer, how many closes did you get for that type of mailer, and how many people are still in your database that said no to you, that you're going to follow up with consistently, because a lot of times it's about the timing that I was talking about. At what point in their life are they ready to move? Are they ready to just take that action and walk away? Okay, so if you spend money on marketing and don't track your statistics and your numbers, specifically your cost per closed deal for that type of lead, then you're doing it wrong. Okay, then you're wasting your money. So same thing with pay-by-click marketing. Same thing. You want to know all of those numbers. How many people emailed you? How many people called you? How fast did you get back to that phone call? Because a lot of these people are answering live or within a couple of minutes, every time. And so you want to make sure you're tracking all your key statistics so you know how efficient you're being. And it's not just, hey, my mailer's cost is this. It's What's the cost of the person on the phone if you're not going to do it yourself? What's the cost of the call system and the CRM tracking system and the cost of the person to go buy the property and the commission structures you have to pay people to do this, unless you're going to be the one answering the phones and going to the property every time, which you may want to do in the beginning, then you definitely want to make sure that you have those costs dialed in too and built into your cost per closed deal. Question.
Are you hiring a VA that has those systems, or are you buying that software yourself?
So we use CallRail for all the calls, and it records all the calls, and it goes right into our Podio system, which we pay monthly for, and that's the CRM system, and we use that for all of our lead sources. So we have a category for pay-by-click and a whole system for that with all the metrics tracked. Same thing with the mailers, same thing with auction sites, same thing with wholesalers, and we have every category built in there so we know how many leads we're reviewing on a monthly basis from each one of those categories, how much they're costing us for each one of those categories, and how many closes we're getting and what the cost per closed deal is. So that's for each one of those individual categories. And you have to constantly tweak. Like I said, the mailers right now are tough because the market's so tight. But if you switch that up and get in front of more people and do more strategic mailers that are high quality and being seen, then that may change the metric. Question?
I just returned from wholesaling Houses Elite Live in Dallas.
Okay.
And I have a lot of amazing startups that I came across where they're offering bonuses not only for deal machine, like where you can have guys drive around and instantly send a mailer, the mailing address, but call tools where you can have a 10-line dialer, so you can call 10 people at the same time.
That's awesome.
And leave voicemail drops. And then cheaper skip tracing sites and REI Rail, which is just like CallRail except it's integrated better with Podio. So
yeah,
this
is all the marketing techniques and things like that, right? And there's lots of technology coming out now to really help with that. Like he's saying, the text messaging, you can do auto text to tons of people. You can do what's called slide dial, I think is what it's called, where you can go through and leave voice messages where it will never ring, because everybody listens to their voice messages. Well, for the most part, you get some people that don't, but for the most part, everybody's going to listen to their voice message. They're going to look at their text and get rid of it and delete it, or whatever. And I personally hate text marketing because it's annoying, but at the same time, it works a lot of the time. It's like 100% open rate, for those things. And that type of software he's talking about, people will drive around neighborhoods and say, there's a vacant house. Let me go do an automatic mailer right now from my phone on this app. Basically, I don't remember what the app is called, but
Deal Machine.
Deal Machine. Okay.
You can customize just from the app.
Okay.
Like to send your own person, and it's yellow letter too.
Yeah, you're sending your own personal thing with a yellow letter and all that stuff right when you're in the field driving around. So if you drive around neighborhoods and you're like, that house has really high grass and it looks like it's vacant, let me send a mailer there. Or go drop one off in the mailbox. But, but that's inefficient.
Does it go to that house or does it go to
goes
the
to the
owner of the
mailing
house?
address.
It goes to the mailing address of that
It has
house.
skip tracing built into it, so it'll go to the mailing address of the owner.
Yeah, because you can have out-of-state owners and
it'll
things like that.
include that person, whoever's on title. It'll say, "Hey Ryan," so it's completely personalized. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it says that person that's on title. So unless it's in an LLC.
What was it called again? Deal what?
Deal Machine.
Deal Machine.
So you can cook all your bird dogs with it. I call my bird dogs.
Awesome. Yeah, there's going to be more and more tech that comes out consistently to do this and make your life a lot easier on this side. But start off with something small. Like I said, start off with the relationships, because you'll get deals that way, and you won't spend all the money, and you'll get really good at analyzing these deals, and that's the most important thing. You should be able to analyze deals in 10 to 15 minutes max every single time. I can do it in 5 every single time now, just looking at comps and saying, boom, I'm done. I know what my value is, I know what my rent comps are, and you can basically go and analyze things. Okay, I'm going to open up to any questions you guys have. Hope you guys got some value. Yeah?
So, based on your experience right now, what percentage of your business is lending versus flipping?
we've exploded on the lending side. So we have about 10 million lent out to different flippers, and then we flip about 5 a month right now, and then we flip in a couple of other markets, and we're doing some smaller multifamilies and things like that. So I don't know what the percentage is, but I have separate businesses doing those things. But average loan size is like $135,000 or something like that in the Midwest, and so you do the math on the number. I don't know what it is. So. But yeah, I mean, half maybe.
So one of the things that we need is financing. So if you do take a subject to the first, you need some money for the second. Or I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first and seconds are tricky because you're going to get beat up on the interest rate of the second if you're doing debt, and a lot of times you're dealing with small private investor seconds versus the professional investor that's going to go 65 to 70% usually of the market value on a deal, right? Of the after repaired market value. And they're going to make you put that money in before they put that money in themselves, right? And so a lot of times you'll have to come in with a private investor in second position to do that type of deal, or you'll have to go through and do a joint venture partnership with somebody that has the capital on that deal, or you put it up yourself. And a lot of times people are limited because they can't do as many deals because they have to put up that money themselves. If you get to the point where I am, where I have so many private relationships that have just trusted me over so many years that I've never lost their money, I basically can fund 100% of the deal if I want to, and they know that I'm going to cover them, and I even give them a personal guarantee because I've never lost their money, and I'm going to take the hit for them anyways if I did, So it's about those relationships, and the way to raise private capital is to be able to teach them how they're protected, right? Have them understand the deed of trust, the promissory note, the assignment of rents and leases that get secured against the property with the deed. Having them understand the personal guarantee, the construction costs involved, and your profits that are going to be in that deal, and their loan to value. It's about education more than anything else to build that trust. And if you don't have that level yet, then partner with somebody who does, or bring in the money in a different way. Make sense? Cool. Question.
Are you personally doing any flips in California, or do you plan to do any in the future?
Right now, the margins are very thin, so I have not been doing in California. I've probably done a handful, but I don't do very many of them. I look at the reason why I don't do that is because I can do volume in different markets comparatively to California at a fraction of the marketing costs. And my downside risk, if the market tanks, is renting. And if my downside risk is covered by the renting in the Midwest markets, I'm usually at like an 8 to 10 cap on as far as, everybody know what cap rate is? So it's basically if you bought it all cash, what it produces in income divided by your cost. So if it's making $7,000 a year of income on a $100,000 cost property, it's 7%. So I'm usually buying at 8 to 10 caps, and so if I have to go, if something stops and I can't sell that property, I can rent it and pay for my debt payments either way. You see what I mean? And so in California, you're bleeding until you sell that thing. And so it's a bigger risk to me. And California is a much more volatile market. So California goes like this. A lot of these other Midwest markets like 4%. 4%, 4%, 4%, and a lot of them now, if you look at the data, they've had major upswings. California's starting to slow a little bit more. When the market tanks, I'll be back here for sure. So, and it's all a matter of those numbers, right? So, because that's when you want to buy and grab something here because you can get that appreciation. Make sense? Yeah. Question here.
So, given what you just said, if you're a beginner, stay away from California.
Look, if you get the right deal, I wouldn't necessarily think so because if it falls in your lap, or you could do the right marketing, keep marketing in the relationships here and going after those deals. I'm not saying don't go after them. I wouldn't spend a ton of marketing money on them right now, and I'd make sure that your numbers are right on your spreads because you want to make sure you have that 10% margin on, especially in California when the volatility is so high and we're at the peak of the market, or at least what it seems to be the peak, even though we have a big demand versus supply problem still. There's still a lot more demand than there is supply. So, yeah.
I would strongly recommend that so long as you get a good deal, do not go out of state. You do something relatively close to where you can drive to. So you see with your own eyes, you're there every day, but you're there frequently, you know what's going on. You have a lot more control of what's going on. What Matt's doing out of state is a lot more difficult.
I went through 5 property managers and a lot of contractors in the beginning. And so it's all about your team, and he's right. If you're looking at this hands-on right there in the beginning, you're going to learn way more than being
in Memphis as an example, the only thing that's not in Memphis on Matt's team is Matt.
So the key is it's got to be a good deal. And that's true in Memphis.
Yeah, and he lives here, but he has really good operators, and he deals with a lot of experienced operators. And so, when it comes to that, it really mitigates the deal, and they can put money in themselves and stuff like that as well. So, if you're strategic about it, it can be a great deal. You see other private money lenders and things like that still doing business here. That means people are getting deals. It's just a matter of what are the spreads and are they good enough to make it so that you're comfortable with that deal. And I agree with them. You learn a lot more being hands-on on the rehab and things like that. Being here in this market, you have to rely on team members in a different market. And I found the best way to do that is proper segregation of duties. You have the contractor, a rehab manager, and a realtor going and looking at it and second checking, the rehab manager and your numbers, so to make sure that they're doing a good job. And, if the realtor is going to go sell it, they want to make sure everything's perfect for their sale. And otherwise, they're going to get blamed for it. So you can bring them into some of those deals. Make sense? So, okay, that's all we got right now. If you guys have more questions, you guys can email me at invest@ocgproperties.com, and I'll help you guys out. And I can send you guys the screenshots of some of those the analysis sheets and things like that. And hope you guys got value out of it. Thank you guys. Feel free to